Thank you very much, Last Cearloch. Minister, thanks for taking this debate today. The reason I'm bringing this debate to the House is after I had a conversation with a long-time friend of mine, Tom McGahon from Dundalk, who is an independent bookseller in Dundalk for over 2 decades. And he brought up 3 issues with the free book scheme coming from a bookseller's point of view. So I'm bringing those 3 issues to the Senate today, along with 3 potential solutions as to what the government could do to make it that bit easier. So the first issue that Tom would have brought to my attention was that not enough money was earmarked for the scheme in the first case. The figure that was taken was a figure by Bernardo's, which was about €96 per student. However, both booksellers and schools have said that that figure would need to be up around 120 to 130 per pupil. And that would really guarantee that you wouldn't need a contribution from parents towards a school, however voluntary. So that was the first issue. The second was that there was no real clear instruction from the department to schools about how this scheme should be run. Some schools already have a rental scheme, and naturally they're in a much better placed position to take advantage of the scheme that's been introduced. Whereas schools that previously had no rental book scheme or a limited service are finding themselves now short of funds and are unclear as to whether they're setting up a rental scheme or if they're simply buying books for all students that are then passed on to the next year. So the fact that we don't know, is this grant going to keep coming year after year? So the second point would be that I would really appreciate it if the department could provide a huge amount of clarity as to what schools will need to do in the next 2 to 3 years. Thirdly, and this point is really relevant to shops, so we're talking about independent bookshops here. At present, money is being given to the schools as they approach suppliers for tender submissions. And that is leading to a race to the bottom where the shops in many cases are being asked to bear the brunt of the financial shortfall when tendering. It also places a disproportionate emphasis on price alone. So no consideration is allowed for the sustainability or the existing good service of provision of local shops. I.e., if I'm a school in Dundalk and if I have to go through a tender process and a place in Dublin or Cork or Donegal offers bottom price, it's difficult that you're having to send your money down there rather than going to the local bookshop around the corner. So I think that type of locality needs to be taken into account for something like this. I understand the tender process. I get that it has to be best value for money, but I don't think it's fair that you would be shipping money out of small towns and stuff like that around the place when you have good local bookshops there. So the 3 points then that I would say that I think would be helpful. So there are the 3 issues with the scheme. One of it is to increase the price for pupils. The second one is obviously about giving clarity from schools. And the third one is relevant to the shops about the tendering process. So the 3 solutions that we might have is, first of all, I would absolutely take the advice of the schools and the publishers about what the cost of it is going to be per student. It's the schools and the publishers are saying it's 120, 130, so I think we should really look at that. Secondly, I think we should give clear instructions as to the future of the scheme and how it's going to be implemented. So like I said, that clarity would be really, really helpful. And thirdly, I would think it would be good to have some good instruction that the sustainability is to be a key part of the procurement process. It doesn't make any sense for a larger operator being able to get bottom level prices and that squeezes then smaller, medium bookshops out of the market. So that is, as I said, Minister, I've brought 3 issues with the scheme. I think it needs to be teased out to make it really, because this is a really good scheme, this is excellent, but these are just 3 examples from independent booksellers who are dealing with this day in, day out, that I think we need to fix in anticipation to make a good scheme a really great scheme.
Senator, Minister, 4 minutes.
Thank you, and thank you, Senator. The Senator will be aware that the Department of Education's Statement of Strategy sets out the vision and mission of the Department for an educational system where every child and young person feels valued and is actively supported and nurtured to reach their full potential. It sets as a goal to ensure equity of opportunity in education and that all pupils are supported to fulfil their potential. Since June 2020 and over the past 3 budgets, the Minister for Education has secured funding to support measures aimed at achieving that goal. As part of Budget 2023, Minister Foley announced that over €50 million to provide free books to primary school pupils within the free education scheme from September 2023. This significant investment further reflects the Government's commitment to a quality and inclusive school system and improved learning outcomes for every pupil. The Government recognises that the cost of preparing children for school each September can be a cause of financial difficulty and worry for many Irish families. And this free school book scheme will eliminate the costs to these families for all school books, workbooks and copybooks at primary school. It delivers on the programme for government commitment to extend the free school book pilot, which ran in over 100 primary schools over the past 3 years. The free primary school book scheme will benefit up to 558,000 pupils in approximately 3,230 recognised primary schools, including pupils in over 130 special schools. On the 22nd of March, the Minister announced the details of the scheme. Comprehensive guidance to support schools in the implementation of the scheme was published and has issued to all primary and special schools. The implementation of the scheme will build on the existing school book rental scheme, which is available in some 96% of recognised primary schools and has been in place for many years. Schools are familiar with buying books directly from school book suppliers as part of the operation of existing school book rental schemes, and schools will continue to have autonomy to choose books that meet curricular requirements. I'm aware the Department engaged with the various stakeholders as part of the development of the scheme. This included the primary education management bodies and unions, and the National Parents Council, the Irish Education Publishers Association, Bookselling Ireland, IBEC Retail Ireland, the Small Firms Association, Society of St Vincent de Paul and Bernardo's. The Department also engaged with a number of schools who have experience of running book rental schemes, including some of the schools participating in the DESH pilot free book scheme, to learn of their first-hand experience of operating a book rental scheme. This scheme is supported by government funding of over €53 million, which has been issued to all primary and special schools to purchase all school books, workbooks and copybooks for their pupils in time for the start of the 2023-24 school year. The funding was paid at a rate of €96 per pupil, in line with the validated enrolment figures for September 2022. The free book scheme will seek to ensure that value for money is achieved and that schools will be supported to implement the scheme in a way that has the best learning outcomes for pupils. In recognition of the work required in schools associated with implementing the scheme, the Department has also put in place a grant payment for schools for administrative support. This grant, which is based on enrolment, can be used to employ an individual to work for a specified number of days from April through to August 2023 to carry out administrative work on the scheme. This additional grant will be paid to schools shortly. A full evaluation of the first year of implementation of the scheme will be undertaken in consultation with the Department of Public Expenditure in order to inform the guidance, implementation costs and efficiency of the scheme for future years. I'm acutely aware of the various costs faced by families upon the return of their children to school each September, and this important new permanent measure will significantly reduce the back-to-school financial burden for many families. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Senator, you have 1 minute to respond.
Thank you, Oireachtas. So, Minister, there's about 150 small independent bookshops right across this country. And I think if we don't kind of tinker with this scheme and fix this scheme, it's going to push a lot of those bookshops who are already operating on very fine financial margins. It's going to push a lot of those bookshops to the brink. So I think if we can fix this scheme, if we can tinker it with a couple of the suggestions that I made, it'll make this a very profitable and a very viable scheme for bookshops. And that's really what we want to try and do. And alternatively, a really good scheme takes place in Italy with the Italian education system, where their Department of Education provides book vouchers to the parents through the schools. And then the parents take those book vouchers and then go into their local shops and use those vouchers there. So that's a really good scheme which maintains that business is being kept in those towns. It takes away the concept of a tender process where it's a race to the bottom and a big company or a big group can, overtake that market. So the Italian scheme is good as well, but I would really appreciate if we could look at this and fix these few issues.
Thank you very much, Senator. Minister, you have 1 minute to respond.
Thank you, Senator. The introduction of the free primary school book scheme is a historic moment in Irish education, and it helps us to live up to the promise of free education. I want to thank the Senator for raising this commencement matter and emphasise the significance of the funding for this groundbreaking scheme. I also want to acknowledge the enormous amount of work that has taken place since the scheme was announced in March and is still ongoing in schools to ensure that all children and young people in primary and special schools have books in place for the beginning of the new school year. I just want to thank the Senator for making practical, positive suggestions in terms of how to improve the scheme as well, and I'll certainly bring these suggestions back to Minister Foley, and I think the Department will be wise to consider all the suggestions you've made today as part of the evaluation of the first full year of the implementation of the scheme as well. Thank you.